We were going to set off
Three's
as a company of three.
But apparently, Jack Tripper was not was too busy to show up.
Suzanne Summers had a date.
Yeah, I know. Come and knock on our door. We've been waiting for you.
No, but seriously, we were going to have a guest today.
Right.
But it didn't happen.
Nope.
One day people will be clamoring to be guests on our show.
Yeah, then they'll be sorry.
Shall we talk about relevant matters?
I must admit that I was wrong. Like, I always assumed that Gandalf, because it happens in the Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, and it happens in what do you call it? In Jackson's Lord of the Rings, and like it's been a minute since I've read this, that Gandalf just took right off once, like, here's this evil ring, so later. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, right.
But no, he hung out. He was like there, and he was like, when are you gonna leave? I mean, and he wasn't leaving. He was staying with Frodo, and then he reluctantly left.
Because we've been talking in recent weeks about, well, why didn't Gandalf just urge him to leave quicker? Because when the ring's importance came into focus, then we as readers are like, well, you better get out of there quick, and what are you waiting around for? And what we were describing in the last few weeks is that kind of seemed like they were just taking their own sweet time. Yeah. But even here in the very first few paragraphs of Three's Company, Gandalf is like, he acts like taking time is actually part of his strategy, in the sense that, you mustn't vanish. You have to kind of ease your way out of this situation. Otherwise, people are just going to talk. People are going to be like, where the hell did Frodo go? But if they kind of like weave into the public gossip in Hobbiton, like, oh, everyone knows that, Frodo's just going to buy a new house in Crick Hollow, or, going to go back to his relatives in Brandy, over by the Brandywine, the Brandy Bucks.
In Buckland.
In Buckland, right. So he had to get like a story that made sense, that didn't get people talking. So that it was like, okay, so I see why, you're not just going to get up and be like, I got to get out of here and start running. Get me out of this place.
Oh my God, give me our luggage.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, but that's like to say that. But the first thing is like Gandalf was with him for like 3 weeks. I think Gandalf had every intention. I mean, Tolkien had Gandalf have every intention of staying with Frodo. And
just like escorting him all the way to Rivendell.
Yeah, I mean, like he didn't leave. Like he left because he heard disturbing things. Like he had to go
in the south,
investigate stuff. Yeah. Because I think he fully intended to travel with Frodo.
Right. Like when he goes to the south, like it doesn't describe it yet in Three's Company, like what Gandalf actually finds, and it only describes that he's not there, he's absent. He's like, and Frodo's like waiting for him, missing his birthday party.
Oh no, like the one, like it's like the again, I can't, I mean, not to paraphrase. It's like, oh, I've heard disturbing, rumors, whatever. I've got to take off. I should be back. By the latest at your birthday. I mean, he had to take off, but he had every intention of coming back, because then Frodo was like, well, you missed it, so I'm going to take off. We'll beat you up, we'll meet you. Yeah. So the whole idea that.
But he doesn't meet them.
He doesn't. Well, I mean, that's because he got, unbeknownst to us, he's in Isengard right now, trying to get up the tower.
Right. And all this stuff he reveals in Rivendell.
Yeah. Because of the Jackson movies, because of the Bakshi cartoons, because of all this stuff, I'm thinking that Gandalf, like right after, Shadows of the Past, right, was like, oh, Frodo, you got this ring, so later. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
He just took off. But he didn't. He hung out. I mean, like if you can see like the first line of this of Three's Company, which is what we're discussing now, is that 2 or 3 weeks have passed and Gandalf was still there. You had every intention of staying.
Yeah. I mean, the whole idea is to kind of juggle these two. I mean, that's just a sign of good writing, where you have a problem, and the characters themselves seem conflicted, and they discuss the pros and cons of taking different choices. Right. And and that makes the action believable. Like, okay, I want you to go soon, but not instantly, because instantly means vanish, and vanish means gossip. So they're trying to strategize.
And I think also too that what they're trying to do is like slip off to Crick Hollow, his little house, and keep up appearances, so to speak. So yeah.
Right. Buy a house, keep up appearances, sell the old one. That takes time. But also, like, not only does there's that tactical reason to hang out and not leave in a huff or in a hurry.
Yeah.
But then to make it like more human, or to humanize, when I say human, I don't mean like non-Hobbit. I just mean like to make something more like emotionally, you're more emotionally invested in something. So everything's not just, well, what is the best strategy, in some, chess game. But for Frodo, like, Tolkien takes the opportunity to kind of humanize Frodo in the sense that, you see him become reluctant to take this, knowing that he has to abandon Bag End. That's kind of what you do when you know you're going to have to leave your, that's what you assume you would do if you knew you were going to leave the place you loved and lived for so long. Then it says right here that Bag End seemed a more desirable residence than it had for years. And he wanted to savor as much as he could of his last summer in the Shire. So like the Shire, Bag End, all the things that were familiar to him, Tolkien depicted Frodo as like savoring those moments and like not in a hurry to leave them. So that's another thing keeping him from up and going. You know what I mean? And a less tactical, but a more like personal or emotional attachment or reason. So
yeah, absolutely. And like Frodo, but Frodo has this evil, the most evilest of objects. You know what I'm saying?
Don't touch it.
Don't touch it. It's evil. But you know what I'm saying? So it's like already he knows like the gravity of the situation.
But I feel kind of like a broken record because these last few episodes I keep talking about something that I keep noticing. And no. I don't want to talk about Rings of Power. But what I have noticed, and I've discussed several times, not to bore the audience again, but I've said this before, how this epic journey is starting like small. It's starting with the commonplace, and it's starting like in the weeds with the gardener, rather than in these high, remote, elven, and the dealings of kings and dark lords and stuff. And Three's Company, obviously, we're still there in the Shire among the common people.
Hers and his.
We're still there among the hers and his. See, a lot of our listeners are in their 20s, and they probably don't know what we're referring to.
Do we have listeners? Cool.
Yeah, our main target demographic is like 25 to 35 or something like that.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I figured it'd be like dudes our age that are just like, I don't want to grow up. What have you done with my Lord of the Rings?
Anyway, but there's again this kind of weird pettiness, and like where Frodo has that ongoing spat with Lobelia Sackville Baggins, that he has his party and he leaves Bag End kind of a wreck for her. Like, I'm gonna thrash the place. He's gonna thrash his hotel room, Bag End is like, Lobelia, you clean it up.
It's your place now.
You know what I mean? But it's kind of like, it's funny. Like, those kinds of details were surprising because even Peter Jackson's movie, which I really liked, it depicts Frodo as a little bit of a pure of heart person without many personal flaws or any personal flaws.
Right.
This Frodo is actually more relatable and more down to earth and a little bit more petty. Like, he wants to get revenge on these annoying neighbors, and he's one to steal mushrooms, and he's like, he's not a perfect person.
Right.
And maybe someone in the comments will chime in and be like, "Oh no, Peter Jackson mentioned that
he's a rapscallion.
Elijah Wood was, quite a rapscallion." But and maybe there were, I don't remember. But thinking back to that movie, Frodo did seem like this. He's like Frodo. He's like perfect.
Yeah.
Kind of a more lovable version of Galadriel.
Yeah, I know.
I'm gonna get hate mail for that.
Yeah. No, actually, I think, like I said, Frodo. I mean, I think that is like actually if there was like a Mary Sue in the Lord of the Rings, and I am not implying that.
What's the Mary Sue? What's the male version of a Mary Sue?
I don't know. I mean, like he can kind of do anything. You know what I'm saying? Like Frodo seems like infallible. He always makes the right choice. It seems like maybe I don't know.
He always makes the virtuous choice.
Yes, yeah. But like Sam can be mistaken. Sam makes mistakes. Merry and Pippin make mistakes.
Right.
And Frodo, like you said, he's like
Pippin is the most mistake oriented, I think, and just as if he's like kind of the youngest and the most
carefree.
He's like a teenager, like a human teenager. Like, he kicks things into the hole in Khazad-dûm and stirs up a Balrog.
Well, he woke the orcs up, certainly.
He stirred, he's like, and then Gandalf's like, throw yourself in next time.
You dumb son of a bitch!
And then he looked at the Palantir and shit like that, so.
Yeah, but I mean, again, and Merry was probably like the most pragmatic out of, I think, all of them. He was like the one that was most prepared.
Merry was kind of a badass. Like, full disclosure, I read ahead to Conspiracy Unmasked.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, I forgot all about that.
Yeah,
but
Merry,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Merry was like the one that kind of had everything together. I mean, they could get away at a moment's notice. They were ready to go. I mean, jumping ahead.
He was there in a pinch, and he's like a spy master.
Yeah.
And recruited Sam. Yeah. So let me jump ahead and say one more thing about Conspiracy Unmasked. It saved Tolkien from having to show a boring scene where Frodo tells Merry, Sam, and Pippin everything we already know as readers.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, you already know all the stuff I'm having to go through with this ring thing? And he did it in a clever way, which also gave Merry, Pippin, and Sam even a sense of themselves having agency and doing surprising things, so that they're not always just reacting, that they're actually engaged and able to make decisions on their own. And it was a surprising move, and we'll get into that next time. But
right. Three's Company. Here's the thing too about Three's Company again, and you had mentioned in an early conversation that you don't know if it's day or night. Like what sometimes it's not mentioned and you forget. But the one thing that did kind of make me kind of like, oh damn, it was the first time the Black Rider overtook our little company of hobbits.
Right.
Because it was daylight. They were talking. He was talking about daylight. There wasn't like this dark, lonely kind of
Right. Was it dusk or?
It was still light out. I mean, the shadows were getting long.
Before we get to the first Black Rider encounter, can I just say a few things that lead up to that?
Sure.
Please.
Yeah.
So, So I keep repeating about how like small this journey starts, and when the journey actually starts, when they like leave, it's like they could be going to the local store. Like they're like it's not. There's no fanfare. It's not like the trumpets blew and they gallantly rode through the triumphal arch down the Champs-Élysées to their victory march, or to their a grand departure that was attended by the people of the countryside who knew they were going to fight the great wars of the age, or it was nothing like that.
Did you write that, or was that from a book? That was pretty good.
Hey, thanks. No, it was it was like they came to a gate opening onto a narrow lane.
Yeah,
and they halted and adjusted the straps on their packs. Presently, Sam appeared, trotting quickly, breathing hard. His heavy pack was hoisted high on his shoulders, and they were just trying to like make an inconspicuous exit, and so therefore it was like totally inconspicuous. Right. It wasn't announced. It was just what.
Something that's always stuck with me about Sam too is like when he came rolling up with his pack high, he had a felt bag on his head for a hat.
For a hat, yeah.
That I think kind of like one of those that's Sam's character. You know what I'm talking about? I mean that kind of set him up for like, okay, here's like a what is it called? And you know about all this stuff. Like he has a hat on. He doesn't say like, oh, he's wearing a hat because he's like a rube and he doesn't have a hat, so he need like whatever. But what is it called, man?
Well, like a term, like a literary term.
A literary term where like an example without saying that he's like he's inexperienced or whatever.
Oh, right, like a symbol. I mean,
yeah, okay. It's symbolic of the simple nature of Sam, that he would put a felt bag on his head, like a shapeless felt bag on his head, and call it a hat.
Right, but it also shows like kind of what's the like a novice enthusiasm. Like oh, I'm joining a band. It's my first day in this band, and I'm gonna come wearing like rose-tinted circle sunglasses like John Lennon to band practice,
and bell bottoms
to band practice, because then I'll be my new bandmates will see me and they'll know I'm legit. But actually, you just end up looking foolish.
Right. But the enthusiasm is there, and it's kind of like, oh, this is what real adventurers wear. They need a hat.
Right. Exactly. Like he never wore a hat before, but hey, by golly, I'm going on this adventure. I'm going to see elves, so I better wear my felt bag.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
No, it struck me too.
And it did strike me too as like kind of like the not practical nature. I don't know if practical is like the right word, but like the improvisational nature of Sam.
Yeah.
Where like, okay, I don't have a hat, I'll use this, because I mean that's kind of it. I think it foreshadowed him being able to think on his feet, so to speak, in a very more direct, simple way.
That's good.
That served them better, like as the story progresses.
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
Also, speaking of all that, there's that very telling moment where they talk about whose pack was light and whose pack was heavy.
Yeah.
And at first, Frodo jokingly says, "I'm sure you've given me all the heaviest stuff." Because, he's not used to going on these... Well, I mean, he takes occasional journeys, but, like...
Right.
I think he's just kind of ribbing Sam, but I don't think he was serious, because it turns out Sam is perfectly willing to take more stuff, even though his bag's already heavy. You know what I mean?
Right.
And Pippin kind of ribs Frodo, which it's great to see this interplay. It's not like, oh, Frodo's our leader, we must all worship Frodo. I love to see that, like
the banter, like
there's some banter. So, like, first of all, Sam says, "I could take more, yet my packet is quite light," said Sam stoutly and untruthfully, which means his pack was actually heavy, and he was willing to take more. And we'll get back to the significance of that. Right. But Pippin then says, "No, you don't, Sam." Pippin sticks up for Sam, right? So he's like, it's not all deference to Frodo. So Pippin sticks up for Sam. "No, you don't, Sam." It's good for him, meaning it's good for Frodo. Frodo needs to learn that, we're going on a journey, and he needs to kind of build up his stamina or his constitution a little bit.
Yeah.
He needs some more constitution points.
Right.
Do a D&D reference for me here.
It's constitution points, or build up his strength. There really isn't it's really constitution.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. He's like, he needs to work out basically, and heavy his packet so that he can be strong for the road.
Although, in all fairness, my jam was D&D second edition. So those character sheets back then, they might have a stamina now. There's
stamina, right? You need to roll some stamina points.
Right, but again, I don't remember. There was strength, intelligence, dexterity, constitution, charisma. That's kind of the five that I remember, and wisdom, 6. Right, so
it almost sounds like the scout oath. A scout is trustworthy, brave, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, brave,
that was second
clean
edition,
and reverent, something like that.
Second edition D&D was kind of where I started playing, and then kind of where I kind of ended playing. Every time we go into a campaign, we always go back to second edition, because that's I'm frozen in time that way. So anyway. Constitution.
Right. But anyway, so getting back to this interesting interplay here, kind of introducing Pippin, kind of sticking up for Sam and ribbing Frodo just a little bit. And then Frodo says, "Be kind to a poor hobbit. I shall be thin as a willow wand." I'm sure, having to carry all this stuff. And I looked on a map, and it's actually not as short as I thought it was. Walking from... First of all, Bree to Rivendell is 350 miles.
Wow, that's
it's far
from here to LA.
It's almost like Vegas to Salt Lake.
Yeah.
That's Bree to Rivendell. Hobbiton to Bree. Well, Hobbiton to Brandywine Bridge is a good 50 miles there. So
right.
The whole thing is it's not short. It's short.
No.
I thought it was shorter. The first time I read it, the Shire is just...
Yeah, you thought it was walking from here to Henderson or something.
Yeah, that you could just walk it from here to Boulder City or here.
Yeah.
I'm not in Vegas right now, but imagining we are from Vegas to Boulder City or something, which is just 28 miles away or something. So you could walk it easy in an afternoon.
It's kind of from walking here to Pahrump, because Pahrum's or Logandale
or Moapa Valley.
Yeah,
from
Moapa
Vegas
Valley.
to Moapa Valley is about 50 miles.
Yeah.
Anyway, but for those not keen on Nevada geography, just do your own equivalencies in your own locale.
50 miles from where you are, and imagine walking there.
Yeah,
I can probably do it in 2 days.
Right, but then imagine, I didn't do the calculation, but it's at least 500 miles between the Shire or Hobbiton and Rivendell. It's a good hike. Okay, Brandywine Bridge to Bree, 50 miles. Right there at the bottom of this page. Brandywine Bridge to Bree, 50 miles.
Okay.
So that's 100 miles plus...
So 450 miles to ish.
Yeah, 450 miles from Hobbiton to Rivendell.
Wow.
That's walking from Vegas to Salt Lake City.
Right. Yeah. That's quite a ways.
That's a ways. That in itself is an epic journey for a not very well traveled hobbit. Okay, so I was just talking a little bit about the relationship that's being described between Sam, Frodo, and Pippin.
Yeah.
And especially Sam, who is feels like it's his job to take more of the burden than is his share. And right away, this is starting to depict a relationship between Frodo and Sam in which Sam is the pack horse, or he's like the servant of the higher born Frodo, which is a little bit, hierarchical and master servant kind of thing. But and you and I talked about this privately, but since it's kind of staring us in the face, I wanted to make a comment about the fact that this relationship between Frodo and Sam, Tolkien himself made reference to the fact that it resembled the relationship he had between himself and his Batman, which is a funny word, but the Batman was a kind of usually a less like someone a little bit lower on the socioeconomic ladder, who in war, like in World War I, was assigned to help the higher officer with, like, just with implement. I don't even know the words, but like, so anyway, this is Tolkien's own writing in a letter, where he says, "My Samwise is indeed, as you note, largely a reflection of the English soldier, grafted on the village boys of early days. The memory of the privates and my Batman that I knew in the 1914 war, and recognized as so far superior to myself. Thank you again, warmly, yours sincerely, J.R.R. Tolkien." So he's saying that so the Batman was usually someone of like lower on the social.
That's not true.
I know.
Batman was a billionaire.
He's a billionaire. Yeah, Batman's a billionaire. I know. I think I knew that.
I don't know where he's get his info from, but
I knew you were gonna make a joke like that.
Dude, I'm like, you don't know how hard. I was like, oh, like, where can I go? Where can I go? Yes.
I'm Batman. Right.
Was his name Bruce by chance?
His name was Bruce Wayne. No, but anyway, so it's interesting because I just have to say, like, in a lot of, I don't want to get political, but in a lot of our like modern culture, it's become acceptable among certain people to make fun of the working classes. Like, oh, they're like Trump voters or what? They're uneducated hicks and whatever. But Tolkien, you can tell by the reverence he has for the gaffer and kind of the poor bumpkins of the Shire, and he sees them as like not just in touch with the earth, but here's the thing: like when they run into Gildor, like Sam almost seems more inclined to be touched by the elven like mystery or magic or artistic beauty, the beauty of the elves. Because he says something about like, if I could only, I'm jumping ahead to Gildor, but like he eats their apples, and he's like, if I could only like grow apples like this, I'd be so happy. So it's like,
I call myself a gardener.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But then like he goes straight from like prizing his gardening to like to just oh man.
No, he said, but it's the song that it's the singing that I took to heart, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah,
right.
Like
so here's this bumpkin who cares about like gardening and agrarian pursuits, is actually more inclined to appreciate the high and the elevated of art. Whereas,
but I mean, if you think
go ahead.
If you think about it, though, I mean, like the whole idea, like the elves, like the elves were one with nature. I mean, like
right. That's the thing. Like, that's so interesting because Tolkien, like, he always puts so much emphasis on the natural world. Every time, they even mock. Like, did you ever see the epic rap battles where George R.R. Martin fights J.R.R. Tolkien?
I have not, but
you haven't.
I need to
well, George R.R. Martin in the epic rap battle, like, mocks Tolkien for like for describing every freaking leaf and blade of grass.
Yeah.
Like as if whereas George R. R. Martin's talking about like more raunchy body kind of things that, you know, if sex sells, like a little bit more enticing, marketable stuff. Whereas Tolkien, there's no sex, but he's talking about leaves and flowering. You know,
he goes into detail, but he's like describing this. I mean, if anything, Tolkien described food more than
right.
Detail, more than
No, I don't think it's a problem. I mean, it's actually why that's actually why Fellowship of the Ring is my favorite of the books, because it's the most in that world of just pure appreciation of nature. And he really describes like not only, you know, the beauty of nature, but I don't know, like the elves and the hobbits both, even though one's kind of low and one's kind of high, like they both appreciate nature. You know those bell curves where it's like the grug. No, but there's a meme where like the grug guy and the genius agree with each other, and the midwit's the wrong one. So the grug guy, like a Sam, and the genius Gildor are like in tune with nature. I don't know. I have to say this. I'll be sad if I don't. But there's this moment. It's like if you blink, you'll miss it. But it always seems so touching at the middle to bottom of page 94, where the hobbits are like sleeping outside for the first time. Yeah. And they're just starting their journey, and who should kind of creep on by but a fox, right? A mere fox, a lowly beast of the forest. And he sees the hobbits, and he's like, "Hobbits, well, what's next? I have heard of strange doings in this land." It's not like he sees anything too unusual. Right. But I've seldom heard of a hobbit sleeping out of doors under a tree. 3 of them. There's something mighty queer behind this. He was quite right, but he never found out any more about it. And it, like, again, it seems like a fairly, you know, inconsequential moment in Lord of the Rings. Nothing is known about the future that these 3 hobbits will have, even though we know, or we expect, because we're reading this epic book, that they'll have these amazing adventures, these world-altering feats that they will accomplish. And here is like, just, I don't know why Tolkien chose to put this in here, but for some reason I really do appreciate, like, this, just a little creature wanders by and like, I wonder what's going on with them.
This, again, like this line, this whole like this whole kind of like little descriptive paragraph kind of thing, right, about the fox. Again, I think Tolkien was finding his way around what kind of story this is going to be, because this is very reminiscent of C.S. Lewis, like a fox, kind of like a fox.
A little bit, or like even Wind in the Willows or something. I mean, it's very like.
I never made that Wind of the Willows thing. I always did the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe kind of stuff.
Or
like,
Peter Rabbit or something.
Yeah. But it's again kind of a fairy tale, kind of like
a child's story, kind of from.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This was
like
I think,
like Victorian period or something, you know, like, oh, Mr. Fox saw these 3 little beasts and he twinkled his ears and, you know, went back into his hole.
But you know what this does for me? Like for me, this always like kind of put it squarely in the fairy story realm in a weird way.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, it's kind of comforting to read that, because all of a sudden it's kind of like, oh, I don't know if that's weird. But
no, comfort, exactly. It's like the whole chapter is so cozy. And if literally, this is just the kind of person I am, but if Three's Company, come and knock on our door, if they just kept wandering around in circles in the Shire for the next 6 months,
that would be funny.
And like, you know what I mean? Like speculative Tolkienism, but like wandering around the Shire, like, you know, playing.
Like, I'm not ready to leave the Shire just yet. Playing
in the creeks and, you know, stealing mushrooms.
I wonder if I'll ever look at this creek again.
Stealing the mushrooms and putting fish hook. You know, baiting fish hooks and going fishing for, you know, trout. Like all that cozy stuff is like, I just want to live there. It's very homey, very cozy.
You know what this is though too? It's like it's a pretty stark contrast to when they're camping in the marshes. When Frodo's got when they're trying to get away from the riders, when they're heading towards
like in the Midgewater and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it starkly contrasts to so much that comes later. So that's why I think he makes this very cozy, very warm, and very homey, because when the reader goes forward and finds themselves in Midgewater or the Dead Marshes or Mordor, the reader and our hobbits will always be reflecting like, oh, I sure miss the Shire. That's what they're doing all this for, is to save the Shire, and their memories of the Shire is like, oh wow, that was. Can't we just go back to the Shire because it was so nice, So they make it seem nice. Oh, and then Frodo's didn't even keep watch the first night because he was still in the Shire and he just felt like, this is my home. It's cozy, it's protected. There's nothing to worry about. So they're not even keeping watch, and that ends very quickly.
Yeah. Was this before or after? Well, I know that Frodo heard he didn't know that he was here listening to a Black Rider at the time, but when he overheard the gaffer.
Oh, when the gaffer, yeah. He knew someone was looking for him, so he was on on alert. But I don't think he knew that pursuit was imminent. How actually dangerous, how much danger is actually in. Right, he had no idea, but he soon finds out.
Right.
Right.
I don't really have anything else other than like I said, Gandalf leaving was we pointed that out, that I think he had every intention of staying with the company, so it would have been forced a crowd.
Right.
Like if Gandalf would have been there.
Yeah. So I'm still trying
to
get.
Let's speculate a little bit.
So you're going to speculate?
Well, speculate. I mean, so what happens if, say, they wait till June? Or not June, so September 22nd, Gandalf's with them. Do they run into the ring race right away? Because they're not taking the back roads. So wait,
Gandalf stays with them all the way till September, and then they leave?
Yeah. Just say, but when they left on September 22nd, it coincides with the fact that the ring race found the Shire. They found Baggins. They came all the way to the door of Bag End.
The thing is, I actually think it works better that they left without Gandalf, just because.
No, it does. But
everyone would be like, "Who's this wizard?" I thought Frodo was just going to his new house in Crick Hollow or whatever.
Well, I mean, look, they could play it off because they're like, okay, because everyone knew that Gandalf was holed up in Bag End. They're like, oh, Gandalf's
right.
Strange things are afoot. He's the one who's behind the Frodo living, blah 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 blah. Right. But I mean, again, what kind of story could it have been if Gandalf would have left with them and they ran into the ring race? I mean, Gandalf could open, he can fight off the ring race by himself.
Right.
The Weathertop.
But then, if they openly confronted the ring race, it just seems like things would escalate more quickly, and all the ring race would be like, Gandalf's here, let's, I don't know, how their whole plan to get into Mordor, sleuthfully.
Yes. Stealthily.
Sleuthfully. Stealth, I think, served their purposes even early on in the Shire. Don't want to go out with a big company and just a few little hobbits. No one pays attention. But yeah. So here we are. You're right. It was daytime. The sun was beginning to get low in the light of the afternoon, and that's when they ran into the first encounter with the Black Rider.
Which is, again, struck me is because I always thought that they come at you in the darkest of hours and they
right
scare the pants off you.
In the Jackson movie, he did that very well, and he executed it almost exactly how I saw it, because he had them go to the left off the road, and this describes it as they're taking a left-hand turn into a hollow by the roadside. And just to see them kind of cowering, I don't know. It was very kind kind of vividly described here, and Jackson just kind of lifted it almost word for word, like in terms of what exactly occurred.
But you know that Bakshi did that first. Like Bakshi, like if you look at the Ralph Bakshi,
it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, Jackson like almost like even angles in the shot. See, Jackson, they look at it like.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's almost like, and I think Jackson acknowledged that was a nod to the
interesting
to the cartoon. Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, it's like, oh damn. Yeah. I mean,
that's cool. But yeah, so like, because obviously I had read Lord of the Rings many times, and that it's a vivid scene. It's the first encounter with the Black Rider, and then when I saw it in the Jackson film, I was like, wow, that was good. Like the whole seeing that movie for the first time really was a thrill.
Yes, yes.
Unlike some other things that we've seen.
The film, the series that will not be named anymore.
The series that will not be named, but it will be mocked.
But this is like when Frodo, like the first sense of danger that Frodo has, where it's like, wait a minute, I'm getting chased by who?
Yeah,
and the fact that I do think that. This was like a device to hurry them along towards Buckland,
right?
Safely,
right?
You know what I'm saying, and kind of shake the ring race.
Yeah. And I think like it's interesting that Frodo, when he finds out the level of danger that he's in, when he starts to realize the level of danger that he's in, his first instinct is not like, "What have I done? Why have I brought this upon myself?" His first instinct is to kind of protect his friends. Like, oh, I should go off alone. I don't want to get, he had a line in there, something like, it's bad enough to get my friends involved in like going hungry and going on a long, long walk and sleeping on tree branches or tree roots
for 2 days.
Discomfort. But it's quite another thing to like subject my friends to these kind of real dangers.
I think he said permanent exile.
Yeah, and permanent exile, but just like So but he's already scheming like he wanted to kind of abandon them and get off and just go off on his own.
Yeah.
And so that when Conspiracy Unmasked comes along, and they realize, well, actually his friends are one step ahead of him and are not, because they're like looking out for him and spying on him. They're actually. They'd be less inclined to like let him go because they're already, out of concern for him, they're already like kind of going behind his back. You know what I mean? They're like not gonna let him go that easily, and they'll be like, no, we're here. We're gonna back you up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay, real quick. Okay, so how does this chapter end up? I can't remember.
Just Gildor's kind of seeing them off. Courage is found in unlikely places, said Gildor. Be of good hope. Sleep now. In the morning.
Let me make a quick point, though, here.
Yeah.
So the one thing, though, that has remained with me my whole life, right, from this chapter, is take not the advice of elves, because they will say both yes and no. You know what I'm talking about? Like,
right.
Like my whole philosophy of giving advice to people is directly informed by Three's Company, by
Gildor.
The idea that like there's a lot of stuff that like to me like with Lord of the Rings, I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
Like giving advice, like how many times have you given advice to somebody and it's just bit you on your ass?
Oh, right, yeah.
Like man,
so it says, and so is said, answered Frodo, go not to the elves for counsel, for they will say both no and yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So Frodo said that. It sounds like he's heard it from somewhere.
Well, he probably heard it from Bilbo or Gandalf. Yeah. I mean, but the whole idea that Gildor is like giving him.
Okay, so yeah, it's interesting because like they're like doing these sayings to each other. Gildor starts by saying that Gandalf should be late. It doesn't bode well, but it is said, do not meddle in the affairs of wizards, for they are subtle and quick to anger, like you said.
Right.
And the choice is yours, to go or wait. And then Frodo answers him. It's like almost they're playing almost a one-upsmanship of like,
Yeah,
"Oh, I got a
yeah.
quote for you, buddy." And it is also
Like-
said, "Go not to the elves for counsel, for they will say both no and yes." And that's exactly what Gildor's saying. Like,
Yeah,
go
yeah.
and wait.
But like you said, I always felt that this kind of like what this chapter did, like again with Sam, it changed him. I think like not fundamentally, but it changed him to where it's like there's like more to this world than the Shire. And what it did with Frodo is it did set him up as a as a smart dude. You know what I'm talking about? Like he's not, you
Right.
know, like he knows what to say. He knows he knows
He's diplomatic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Which again is kind of like, I think, I mean, I don't see, there's a hierarchy there, but it does kind of put Frodo in a different category.
A leadership role.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Like for Sam would not have said that.
No.
Right. Right.
Sam would have been like, like,
Can I have some more of this bread?
yeah, this bread has a savor to it.
Got any of them conies?
Yeah, no. But yeah, it's like again, they're talking about the bread and
Yeah.
what they have, like, a fair white loaf. I'm like, that sounds delicious. Like I remember like as a kid, I'm like this thinking like, God, I want to go to England because they have the best food, and realize like most English food, like the stereotypical bangers and mash and
Right,
like,
right,
it's
right.
like
That's the stereotype.
stuff
Yeah.
is like my grandma, who's from England, or she was Irish, my grandfather, they boiled everything.